Okay, so let's continue with what we were working on yesterday. So writing equations and solving them. So translating just a sentence, being able to write. So someone tell me, number 11, it says the sum of negative 1/3 of a number and 16 is 11. 14, what'd you say? Excellent. If you haven't done so yet, you and your partner can now solve. Go. "25, Lucille, that's you. What did you get as the answer on number 11? You're muted at the moment, sweetheart. Well, you had just unmuted, so it should work for you to unmute because I saw it unmute for you already once. But number 11, what'd you get for the answer? Very good. N equals a positive 15. Any questions on number 11? Okay, number 12 was your bell work, and number 12 looks extremely similar to number 4 on the orange sheet of paper that we did yesterday. It's just a 2-step equation instead of a 1-step equation that we did yesterday. So based on yesterday, can I do anything with a percentage? What do I have to do to that percentage first? Make it a fraction or make it a decimal? Who wants to tell me how they wrote this one? Sophie. Perfect. That is one way. Someone give me another way. Aubrey? Perfect. Did anyone write it another way? Morgan? Perfect. We could have come up with more fractions than that. I could have had, what other fractions could I have had? Brayden? 6/10. Any other fractions? Those are the 3 most common ones. Okay, if you have not solved it, you and your partner solve that problem for me. Okay. 13. What'd you get? Positive or negative? It is not a positive, it is a negative. So you should have told me n equals a negative 80 because 48 should be a negative 48 because it's a negative 65 plus 17. That 65 is bigger, so it's a negative 48, and then the negative stays. Does that make sense, everyone? Questions? Okay, next two questions are a little bit different. So if we look at number 13, it's going to say the sum of a number and 7 divided by negative 3 is 2. What do you think the first thing I should do is? What's my first keyword that we see? What is it? Okay, first keyword I see is sum. What's my second keyword that I see? Divided by. What's the next keyword that I see? So what's the problem equal to? So it's equal to 2. Then let's go through this. It says the sum of a number and 7. What does that sentence right there mean? Just that first part. The sum of a number and 7. N plus 7. Then it says divided by negative 3. Well, what in the world is being divided by negative 3? The sum of those two numbers. What does sum actually mean? Okay, it means to add, but it means the total of the adding together, which means that I have to do what first? I have to do addition first. And in order to add first, what do I need to add? If you want to divide the answer to the addition problem, the sum, first, you have to add those parentheses. And then you can tell me that it is divided by 7. So you are taking the entire addition problem, adding it together, dividing by 7, it equals 2. You could have also written just n plus 7 inside parentheses, then the divided side, and a 2 after it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Questions on how we wrote that one? Abram. Thank you. My bad. Divided by negative 3. Looking at wrong numbers. Besides the fact that I said the wrong number. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, Bella. Oh, alrighty. Just stay on there. She might come back on. There she is. Okay. Now the question is if I rewrite this, you don't technically need those parentheses if you write it like this. Is that understood? Mm-hmm. If you write it side to side, where you write it like that, then you have to have parentheses around the n plus 7. Understood? Mm-hmm. So now we have to solve it. Who remembers how to solve a problem that looks like this? What's the first thing we have to do, Campbell? Excellent. I have to get rid of that fraction first. It must go away. In order to do that, I multiply by a negative 3. The negative 3's go away. I'm left with n plus 7 equals 2 times negative 3, which is, and what do I do now? I subtract 7 from both sides, which means n is going to equal negative 6 minus 7, negative 13. Don't forget those integer rules. Questions? Do number 14 with your partner. Go. Good. You should have written n minus 5 divided by 6 equals negative 4. So then number 16, what did you guys tell me the answer was? N equals? Negative 19. Any questions on translating a sentence into an equation and solving it? We are not going to do number 15. You guys technically know how to write this one based on what I've taught you, but I have not taught you how to solve this question because we haven't done any solving of square roots. So you would probably get it wrong because it's a two-part answer. And we're not doing them this year. You will do them next year, so we are not going to worry about it. Questions on any of this? Okay, we are going to move on to word problems, which is the next page of your notebook. But before we move on, everyone take out your homework assignment, worksheet 7. All right, so we are going to do word problems now, and everyone always hates word problems usually. Okay, word problems, though, are real life applications. So my always first piece of advice is if you get an answer and you're like, that doesn't make sense, it's probably wrong. Okay, make sure your answer makes logical sense. If it doesn't make logical sense, we probably messed something up. Some of the word problems on these last 2 pages of your notebook and in your homework assignment, you will be able to solve without writing an equation, but you have to write the equation or you will lose points. Is that understood? Isabel, close your computer, girl. Shouldn't be on it right now at all. Okay, so here is how we solve equations and set them up using equations because I know you guys can solve these without writing them. So I have to teach you how to write an equation. So step 1 is you first have to define the variable. Meaning, what are you trying to find? What's the question asking you for? What does it want to know? So you use a let statement to define the variable. Here's what I mean by that. If we read number 1, it says Connor deposited $84 into his checking account. If his new balance is $451, what was his balance before the deposit? What do I want to know? What's the question asking me for, everyone? So you are going to use a let statement. So what I mean by that is I'm going to let X equal checking account balance. So you are telling me what the variable is equal to. It's going to be equal to whatever my checking account balance is. I don't know what it is. That's what I'm trying to find. So first step, define the variable. What am I searching for? Any questions on that? Step 2, set up the equation and solve. Okay, use keywords to set up the equation. So when we read this sentence, Connor deposited $84 into his checking account. What is the key word? Deposited. What does deposited mean? To put in. Okay? So if it is putting in, am I adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? And what am I adding? So I have plus 84 because deposited plus 84. Does that make sense to everyone? Second sentence. If his new balance is 451, where does 451 go? What? How do you know that? Remember how that key word is? Is means what again, everyone? My new balance is 451, which means it's equal to 451. What am I left with? Where does that go? Because do we know what my checking account balance was before I deposited the $84? No, I want to figure that out. So it's X, which is my checking account balance, plus the $84 that I put in, equals the 451 that I have afterwards. Does that kind of make a little bit of sense? Solve it, please. What does x equal, you guys? So x equals 367. That right there is step 2. Any questions on step 2? Step 3 says to answer it, meaning give exactly what the problem is asking you for, meaning label. 367 what? Okay, show of hands. How many of you, reading that question without setting up the equation, knew that you needed to subtract 451 minus 84? Pretty much everyone, right? That's pretty obvious, isn't it? So if you guys know that you have to set up you have to solve using subtraction, remember how we always do the inverse operation? So when you set up the equation, you use the inverse or the opposite operation of what you want to use to solve. That's the other way you know that's an addition equation. You cannot set up an equation saying 451 minus 84 equals x. I will mark it wrong 100% of the time. That is not an equation. Is that understood? No equations can be equal to a variable. Got it? Mm-hmm. Questions before we do numbers 2? Okay, number 2. Same thing, guys. Define the variable. 6 adult tickets to a movie at a theater cost $52.50. Find the price of one ticket. What do I want to know, everyone? So x equals price of one ticket. Okay, let's try the other method. How do I solve this problem without setting up an equation? Okay, I want to solve using division, right? So my equation has to be set up using the opposite operation of division. What's opposite of division? So I need a multiplication equation sentence. What 2 things am I multiplying together? Variable and 6, because there are 6 tickets times whatever the cost is of that ticket is then equal to what? 52 and 50 cents. Your total is 52.50. If your total is whatever 52.50 is, that is always your equal to. Equals the total, always. And then it's 6 times your variable because it's 6 times the price of each ticket. Does that make sense, guys? Questions on that? Okay, solve it for me, please. What does x equal? So hopefully you told me 875, and then you would have told me with that label it was $8.75. Be careful with division. Division's always tricky. Questions? Okay, let's do number 3. Let's go sentence by sentence. First though, let's figure out the variable. So 3/4 of the 8th graders at Kingston Middle School went on a class trip. If 252 students went on the trip, how many 8th graders are there? What's my variable? X equals number of 8th graders. Then you can go sentence by sentence. What is the key word? Raise your hand when you see it. Of the sentence, or the key word in that first sentence. That would tell you whether to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. There's a key word in that sentence that tells you what operation to set up an equation as. Okay, those with your hands up, what is it? It is of. What does of mean, everyone? It means multiplication. Every single time you see that word of, guys, it means to multiply. So what am I multiplying? What's that first number? So it says 3/4 of means times, and I'm going to times it by the number of 8th graders. N or X, whatever you chose your variable as. We don't know the number of 8th graders, so that's my variable. Does that make sense, everyone? Then what? If 252 were on the trip, where does that go? So it equals 252. Solve it, please. Go. Don't forget your fraction rules. What did we get? X equals what, everyone? And what's my label? 8th graders, students, anything along those lines that means students. Now, on that problem, let's say I got a number that was smaller than 252. Would that make sense? No. So if you ever get a number that all of a sudden you think and you're like, okay, my answer is 150. Well, there can't be 158th graders if 258th graders went on the trip, right? So please always make sure that it makes logical sense. Questions? Okay, you and your partner are going to do 4, 5, 7, and 8. You are going to skip 6. Don't cross it out. Just skip it. It's a really, really weird problem. Okay? So go do the other 4, just not 6, with your partner.